Emily Parker stared out the window of her apartment, the Chicago skyline glowing beneath a cold April night. The lights of the city blinked like restless thoughts, distant, unreachable, and endless. Her husband, Daniel, was out of town again, this time for a week-long business trip in New York. The apartment felt hollow without him, filled only with the soft hum of the refrigerator and the steady tick of the wall clock. It wasn't that Emily disliked silence, but lately, silence had begun to sound a lot like loneliness. Their marriage had started with passion and laughter. They were that couple everyone envied: spontaneous weekend trips, handwritten notes, and late-night talks about dreams. But over the years, the warmth had faded into habit. Daniel had grown distant, always glued to his laptop, traveling more, smiling less. When they spoke, the conversations were practical, brief, and predictable. Emily had tried to fix things, planning dinners, booking small getaways, but the effort always seemed one-sided that night. As she sat by the window sipping tea, she felt that old ache again, the one that whispered, "You're invisible." Her phone buzzed. It was her best friend, Lena, a woman full of energy and charm, the kind of friend who could drag you out of your own sadness. "Lena, please tell me you're not home in pajamas again." "Emily, where else would I be?" "Lena, rooftop bar downtown. Music, lights, people. You need to breathe. Get dressed. I'm waiting." Emily hesitated. It had been months since she went anywhere that wasn't work or grocery shopping. But the thought of sitting in that empty apartment another night felt unbearable. Maybe, she told herself, she just needed to feel human again, not a wife. Not a shadow of routine, just her. She stood, pulled her hair into soft curls, and put on a navy blue dress, simple but elegant. She looked in the mirror, almost surprised by her own reflection. There was still something left in her, a spark buried under the weight of quiet years. The rooftop bar was small, intimate, with soft golden lights strung across the terrace. The city stretched endlessly below, a mosaic of sound and motion. Lena spotted her instantly and waved excitedly, already seated with two men. "Em, you made it," Lena cheered, pulling her into a hug. "Meet Ryan and Mark, friends from work." Ryan had a calm, thoughtful face and a quiet charm that made people lean in when he spoke. Mark was the opposite, confident, funny, with a quick smile that lit up his entire face. Emily smiled politely, trying to relax. She hadn't expected company beyond Lena. But the men seemed kind and respectful. They ordered drinks, and soon the conversation flowed easily. Ryan talked about his work as a travel writer, the cities he'd seen, the people he'd met. Mark, a photographer, shared stories about chasing sunsets and moments that never repeat. Emily found herself listening intently, drawn to their stories, their ease, their laughter for the first time in a long while. She wasn't someone's wife or someone's responsibility. She was just Emily, and people were actually interested in what she had to say. As the night deepened, the rooftop filled with soft music and laughter. The glow from the city below painted everything in gold. Lena excused herself after a while. She spotted an old friend and went over to greet him, leaving Emily with the two men. "Your friend seems like the social type," Kay Ryan said with a smile. "She always has been," Emily replied, laughing softly. Mark leaned back in his chair. "And you seem different. Like you're here, but your mind's still somewhere else." Emily hesitated, surprised by his directness. "Maybe it is," she said honestly. "It's been a long year." Ryan's tone was gentle. "You don't have to tell us, but sometimes a change of view helps. Nights like this, they remind you the world's still moving, even when you feel stuck." His words hit her unexpectedly. Stuck, that was exactly how she felt. She wasn't unhappy with Daniel, at least not entirely, but she felt unseen, forgotten. Marriage had turned into something polite and quiet, and she didn't know when it had happened. They talked about choices, regrets, and what it meant to lose yourself while trying to please everyone else. Mark joked about relationships. Ryan balanced it with sincerity. And Emily found herself in the middle, laughing, listening, feeling alive. Hours passed quickly. When she finally glanced at her phone, It was well past midnight. "I should go," she said, standing up. Ryan offered to walk her to her car, and Mark joined them. The city streets were calm, the sound of distant traffic blending with the cool night air. They stopped near her car under a streetlight. "This was nice," Emily said quietly. "I didn't realize how much I needed it." Ryan nodded. "You should allow yourself more nights like this, not wild ones, just moments that remind you who you are." Emily smiled faintly. "That's harder than it sounds." Mark tilted his head. "Only if you forget you deserve it." She didn't know how to respond. Something about the kindness in their tone, the lack of judgment, the simple humanity in their words. It made her heart ache a little. It wasn't about attraction. It was about connection. The kind she hadn't felt in a long time. They said their goodbyes, and she drove home in silence, the night replaying in her head. She hadn't crossed any line, but emotionally something inside her had shifted. When Emily unlocked her apartment door, the air felt heavier than before. The photo of her and Daniel on their wedding day hung by the entrance, their smiles young and fearless. She traced her fingers over the frame, feeling the faint dust beneath her fingertips. Sitting on the couch, she kicked off her heels and sighed. Ryan's words echoed in her mind. "Remind yourself who you are." Who was she, really? A woman who loved her husband but felt invisible. A loyal partner slowly fading into the background. She didn't know anymore. On the table beside her, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Ryan, thank you for tonight. You seemed like someone who needed to be reminded she's still alive. Take care, Emily." She stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to feel. She typed back, then deleted it. Instead, she whispered to the quiet room, "Thank you," as if he could somehow hear her. That night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the rooftop lights, heard the laughter, felt the rare weightlessness of being seen. It wasn't about falling for anyone, it was about realizing how lonely she had become in her own life. She rolled over and stared at Daniel's empty side of the bed. A part of her felt guilty for even thinking of that night, while another part of her longed for more moments like it where she felt noticed, valued, real. Before she drifted off to sleep, she told herself it was nothing, just a harmless night. But deep down, she knew something had changed. Not in the world outside, but within her. Because sometimes the most dangerous secrets aren't the ones we tell others. They're the ones we keep from ourselves. And that night, Emily had begun to keep one. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, spilling over Emily's bed like a quiet reminder that life moved on, no matter how heavy the night before had felt. Daniel's side of the bed was still empty. The faint scent of his cologne lingered on the pillow, but it felt like a memory more than a presence. Emily stared at the ceiling for a long time, her mind drifting back to the rooftop, the laughter, the city lights. Ryan's gentle voice telling her to remember who she was. She got out of bed, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table scrolling through her phone. There were work emails, messages from friends, and then the one that made her heart skip. "Ryan, hope you slept well. Don't let the world dull your light, Emily." She stared at the message, unsure what to say. It wasn't flirtatious, not really. It was kind, too kind. She typed, "Thank you. I appreciate it," and hit send before she could overthink. For the rest of the morning, that message stayed in her head, like a whisper she couldn't ignore. Days passed, and Daniel returned home. Emily waited for that familiar warmth she used to feel when he walked through the door, but it wasn't there. He kissed her cheek, smiled faintly, and began talking about meetings and presentations. She nodded, pretending to listen, though inside she felt miles away at dinner. She told him about the new project at work, about Lena, about anything that could fill the silence. But Daniel seemed distracted, his eyes fixed on his phone. "You've been traveling a lot lately?" she said softly. He nodded without looking up. "Yeah, it's busy season. You know how it is." Emily forced a smile. "Maybe we could plan something soon, just us." He looked up then, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I'll try 'em, really." But right now, it's just bad timing. She nodded, though the words stung. It's always bad timing, she whispered under her breath. But he didn't hear it after dinner. He went straight to the study, leaving Emily alone at the table. She stared at their wedding photo on the wall, her white dress glowing under sunlight, Daniel's arm around her waist. They looked happy, alive. She wondered when that version of them had disappeared. The following evening, Lena called. "You sound like a ghost," she teased. "Get dressed. We're going out again. You need to stop living like a widow." Emily laughed despite herself. "Lena, I can't. Daniel's home. Then all the more reason," Lena replied. "He's busy anyway, right? Come on, Em. One drink." Emily hesitated but agreed. Maybe she just needed to breathe again. That night, she met Lena at a quiet cafe downtown. To her surprise, Ryan was there too. He smiled when he saw her, that same calm, knowing smile that made her chest tighten in a way she didn't understand. "Didn't expect to see you again," she said. "Neither did I," he replied. "But maybe fate's better at planning than we are." Lena laughed. "Oh, please, you two talk like a movie script. I'm getting more wine." She left the table, leaving them alone. Ryan leaned forward. "You look lighter than last time. Happier, maybe?" Emily smiled faintly. "That's a kind lie." "It's not," he said softly. "But maybe it's a reminder that you could be." His tone wasn't romantic. It was gentle, human, the kind that saw through walls people built around themselves. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told him about Daniel, not in anger but in quiet honesty, about how love can turn into something that looks like friendship, about how silence can hurt more than shouting. Ryan listened, never interrupting, never judging. When the night ended, he walked her to her car again. The city hummed around them. Between them was only silence, soft and full. "I don't know why I keep talking to you," Emily said. "Because you need to," Ryan answered. "And maybe I do too." She nodded, her heart heavy but calm. "Good night, Ryan. Good night, Emily." She drove home feeling both comforted and conflicted. The next few days passed quietly. Emily threw herself into work, but Ryan's messages became a small part of her day, never inappropriate. Never suggestive, just thoughtful notes that made her smile. "Hope your meeting goes well. Don't forget to take a break. You sound tired today. Take care of yourself." It wasn't an affair, not in the way people think of one. But emotionally, she knew something was forming. A connection. A quiet escape. Then one evening, Daniel came home earlier than usual. He brought dinner and flowers, something he hadn't done in months. "I thought we could have a quiet night," he said, smiling awkwardly. Emily was surprised, even touched. "That sounds perfect." They sat on the balcony, the city lights shimmering below. For a while, it almost felt like old times. Daniel laughed at her stories, told her about a new promotion, and even reached for her hand. But when her phone buzzed on the table, Daniel's eyes flicked toward it. She quickly turned it over, guilt washing over her. He smiled faintly. "Work." "Yeah," she lied. He nodded, though his expression said he didn't fully believe her. The tension between them returned like a shadow. Later that night, after Daniel fell asleep, Emily sat by the window, scrolling through her messages. Ryan had sent another one. "You okay? You were quiet today." She didn't reply. Instead, she stared at Daniel, sleeping peacefully beside her, and whispered, "What's happening to us?" The following weekend, Daniel had to travel again, this time to Boston. As he packed, Emily asked quietly, "Do you ever get tired of always being away?" He sighed. "Of course, but it's part of the job. It's for us, Em. You know that." She wanted to believe him, but she wasn't sure for us meant the same thing anymore. After he left, the apartment felt heavy with silence again. That evening, Ryan called. His voice was soft, hesitant. "I didn't want to bother you. Just checking if you're okay." Emily hesitated. "I'm fine, just thinking too much about him." She nodded, even though he couldn't see. "And about me." There was a pause on the line. You know, Ryan said slowly, sometimes people hold on to something because they remember how it used to feel, not because it still feels that way. His words sank deep. Maybe, she said, but marriage isn't something you just walk away from when it gets hard. I know, he said, but it's also not something you survive by pretending. The call ended quietly, but his words stayed. Emily sat in the dark for a long time, her mind spinning. The next morning, Lena stopped by with coffee. You look like you didn't sleep, she said, handing her a cup. I didn't. Emily admitted. Lena gave her a look. Emily, are you sure you're okay? You've been different lately. Emily smiled weakly. I'm fine. Just figuring things out. Lena studied her. You're not falling for someone, are you? Emily froze. What? No, of course not. Good, Lena said gently. Because sometimes when you're lonely, kindness can look a lot like love. Those words hit her harder than she expected. That night, Emily couldn't sleep again. She scrolled through old photos of her and Daniel, their honeymoon, their first apartment, that silly selfie from their anniversary dinner. The love was real. It had just changed. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Ryan. Some people cross your path to remind you what your heart sounds like. Don't lose that, Emily. She read it twice, then put the phone down. She couldn't do this anymore, not even the innocent parts. She needed to decide who she wanted to be. The woman who waited for her husband to see her again, or the one who let her loneliness define her choices. As she stood by the window, watching the rain hit the glass, she realized something. It wasn't about Ryan. It wasn't even about Daniel. It was about her, for the first time in years. She saw her reflection not as someone's wife or someone's friend, but as a woman who had stopped living for herself that night. She promised herself one thing. She would no longer let her heart wander in silence, but keeping that promise would soon prove harder than she imagined. Because when Daniel returned from Boston, something unexpected happened, something that would test every decision she had made. When Daniel returned from Boston, Emily felt a mix of anticipation and dread. She had spent the past week wrestling with her feelings, questioning her marriage, her heart, and the quiet connection she had with Ryan. Standing at the door to greet him, she forced a smile, hiding the storm within. Daniel hugged her tightly, murmuring, I missed you, Em. She hugged back, feeling the familiar warmth. Yet a distance lingered, a subtle reminder that their life together had shifted while he was away. Inside, the apartment smelled of his travel bag and faint cologne, comforting yet bittersweet. Dinner was quiet. Daniel talked about work, projects, and colleagues. But Emily noticed the nervous fidgeting, the way he avoided her eyes at times. She asked about Boston, about his meetings, and he answered. But there was something left unsaid, hanging in the space between them. After clearing the dishes, Emily suggested they sit on the balcony like old times. The city lights flickered beneath them, casting soft reflections on their faces. For a moment, the old rhythm returned, quiet companionship. The feeling that they could simply be together without words. Then Daniel spoke, breaking the silence. Emily, there's something I need to tell you. Her stomach tightened. What is it? He took a deep breath, his fingers nervously twisting the napkin in his hands. While I was away, I realized I'd been taking us for granted. Not just lately, but for a long time. I haven't been present the way I should. He paused, searching her face. I don't want to lose you, Em, and I know I've made mistakes. Emily's heart raced. She wanted to believe him, to feel the reassurance she had once felt without question. But the truth of the past weeks tugged at her, reminding her that life isn't reset by apologies alone. Daniel, she said softly, I know. I've felt it too. I've felt lonely, like we're existing in the same space, but not together. He nodded, shame flashing across his features. I know, and I want to change that. I want to be better for us. For a while, they sat in silence, the city humming around them. Emily wondered if love could be repaired with words, or if the cracks had grown too deep. Over the next few days, Daniel made efforts, small gestures that spoke volumes. Coffee in the morning, thoughtful texts, leaving little notes around the apartment. Emily noticed the effort and felt a flicker of hope. But Ryan's messages, quiet and understanding, still appeared like reminders that her heart could reach beyond the boundaries of her marriage. One afternoon, she met Lena for lunch. Lena noticed her distracted glances at her phone. "You're still thinking about him?" Lena said knowingly. Emily sighed. "It's not him," she said. "It's me. I'm realizing that I've been holding on to comfort, not happiness. I don't know how to be completely honest with myself." Lena reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Sometimes the hardest truth isn't about someone else, it's about finally seeing yourself clearly. Emily nodded, understanding the weight of those words. She needed to confront her emotions and make choices without running from them. That evening, Daniel returned home earlier than expected. Emily had been sitting by the window, staring at the rain hitting the glass. When he walked in, she noticed the tension in his posture, the seriousness in his expression. "Emily, can we talk?" he asked. She nodded, bracing herself. They sat in the living room, the sound of rain filling the quiet space. "I need to be honest about something that happened in Boston," he began. "I met someone, a client I've been working with. We talked, and I realized I've been emotionally distant. And I didn't want to admit it at first, but I care about you, and I don't want secrets between us anymore." Emily's pulse quickened. "Daniel, what does that mean?" He looked her in the eyes, vulnerability shining through. "It means I almost let distance ruin us. I almost allowed someone else to fill the gap I should have been filling with you. But I didn't. And that's when I realized how much I love you, and how much I need to be here for you completely. Not just in presence, but in heart and mind." Emily exhaled slowly, the weight of uncertainty beginning to lift. She realized that the silent connection with Ryan had been a mirror, reflecting what she had been missing at home. But it wasn't about replacing her marriage, it was about understanding her own heart, acknowledging the emptiness she felt, and wanting to fill it authentically. "Daniel," she said gently, "I've been distant too. I didn't know how to express it. I felt lonely, even with you here. But I also realized I've been seeking comfort in the wrong places." He took her hand. "Then let's fix this. Together. No more silence, no more pretending. We can rebuild, Emily, but we have to be honest with each other and ourselves." For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a spark of hope. They talked long into the night, sharing feelings they hadn't voiced in years. They laughed, they reminisced, and for the first time, the past felt like a bridge rather than a weight. The next morning, Emily called Ryan. She thanked him for his kindness, his understanding, and for showing her the reflection of what she truly needed in her life. She told him that while their connection had been meaningful, her heart belonged at home with Daniel, with the life they were committed to rebuilding. Ryan's response was gentle, supportive. "I understand, Emily. You deserve to be happy wherever that is. Take care of your heart." Emily felt a sense of closure she hadn't known she needed. The chapter with Ryan had been important, a reminder of her own worth and desires. But it wasn't the story she wanted to live. Over the following weeks, Emily and Daniel worked intentionally on their relationship. They scheduled date nights, shared responsibilities, and, most importantly, talked openly about their fears and dreams. The city lights that once felt distant now became a backdrop for their renewed connection. Emily noticed small changes. Daniel leaving thoughtful notes, sending midday texts just to check in, and taking the time to ask about her day. She responded in kind, expressing gratitude, sharing her hopes, and allowing herself to be vulnerable again. One rainy evening, they stood on the balcony, much like they had the first night he returned. Daniel held her close, whispering, "I love you, Emily. I always have, and I want to show you that every single day." Emily rested her head on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. She realized that love wasn't perfect. It was messy, emotional, and sometimes frightening. But it was real, and with honesty, effort, and patience, it could endure as they watched the rain together. Emily knew that life would continue to test them. There would be moments of doubt, loneliness, and longing. But she also knew that their commitment, rebuilt on truth and understanding, was stronger than any secret, any temptation, any shadow from the past. And in that quiet city night, amidst the gentle rhythm of rain and distant traffic, Emily felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced her own heart, confronted the complexities of love, and chosen to nurture the bond that truly mattered. The past weeks, the messages, the late-night thoughts, the fleeting moments of connection outside her marriage had taught her the most important lesson. Love requires courage, honesty, and unwavering presence. And for Emily and Daniel, the story of their marriage was far from over. It was a story renewed, filled with promise, understanding, and the quiet power of choosing each other every day.